All right, we're in Val. Episode 80, Strength Hammer Podcast. The Knot. I would assume we're square based here at the Strength Hammer Podcast because we're talking old worlds
Oh,
we support.
oh, this is a very vast podcast. That's good to know.
It is. I mean, I went to a Bast GT. I've subscribed to my first Patreon. I'm not sure if you noticed that I
Oh,
subscribed to.
really?
I did, and it's a very square best Patreon because I had to see that Discord that you guys have over there for the Square Base GT. Holy cow!
The Squarebase Discord is popping off. It's quite it's hard for me to even keep up, but I do feel I do feel the obligation to appear there as frequently as I possibly can. Also, because the combos are good, man. It's a great little group that's come together on that. That one's all Rob.
Hmm.
Rob's a longtime internet guy, and so I think he learned a while ago that well, much like I realized, the commons are tend to be, I don't know, kind of ruined by a lot of naysaying and infighting and stuff. So it's
Hmm.
nice to have. It's not trying to be exclusive by having the Discord as Patreon only. It's more just like you have to want to be there, and that tends to make for better groups of people talking to each other. You know what I mean?
Oh no, absolutely. Like I said, I never signed up for Patreon before. Not because I didn't feel like giving people my money, just because I'm doing my own hustles and all that sort of stuff. But like I was like, this is community I want to be part of, and you guys seem to have the best community forming around you. I mean, obviously the Square Base GT that was an excellent start to that community. So
Yeah, I mean that was wild. I couldn't believe that. So like, I guess you talked about it on the show,
mhm.
but yeah, I was blown away that we had 30 signed up. We wound up playing with 29, I guess, right? Or did we go down to 28? We went down to 28.
28,
28 was
yeah.
rolling dice, but we had 30 at one point. Actually, more than that. There were a couple drops. So but that was 8th edition fantasy, and nothing but like so much enthusiasm for that. Guys driving, who knows how long? I don't know, 18 hours from the East Coast of Canada.
Yeah.
We had people flying in from the UK. We had Lord Blacksell came in second. Pardon me. Adam Camilleri won the damn thing.
Yep.
The voice of 40K. Who's working on his own little podcast right now for Old World too, Chuck?
Ooh, is he?
We got some competition coming our way.
I missed that. Let's give it a little shout. Does he have a shout out? Is it out yet, or is he just working background noise right now?
No, I think it's got a quiet launch.
Okay.
I object to the name. I object to the name because I
Oh
think
boy.
I don't. Well, I'll hit you with it. Here it is. It's called That Old World Charm.
Uh,
I think they could have. I think they could have. Maybe hit the drawing board a little bit more on that one. But regardless,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
powerhouse show because it's like his Art of War Down Under show. I don't know if you ever listened to that
yes.
for 40K.
Yes, that was one of my
But
few.
it's got one of my co-hosts from Grim After Dark on it, Danny McDevitt,
Hmm.
and my co-host from 40K Stat Center back in the day, Peter the Falcon Colosimo.
Oh, that's where
So
okay, that's where Peter ended up. Okay, because I was wondering, because I'm like,
oh,
he's on Goonhammer. I'm like, where is his voice going
yeah,
to end up for Old World?
yeah, that's where. So they started a show,
Hmm.
and well, if three guys can overcome a name like that, it's those three guys. I listened to the first episode already. It's sort of quietly out there. You can find it on Podbean, I guess.
Yep.
I assume it'll be making its way to the various aggregators, but here I am plugging someone else's show. That's how magnanimous we are in Square Base.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to that because it's, as you're aware, we're in between that phase of we have the embargo open, but we have that 2-week pre-order before we actually have the rules. So, you and
Yeah,
I are consuming as much as we physically can. Like, and it's here's the fire hose drink, and we're like, okay. So you just
yeah.
add another hour and a half to 2 hours, maybe 3. Who knows how long it is to my list of listens in the next couple days.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. I will say that Art of War Down Under eventually, I guess it was as I was falling out of love with 40K, but even when I was as deep into 40K as I could be, it did feel like homework at times. So I feel like it was just a lot of heavy, dense breakdowns of rules as they were appearing. But for something like this, like where there is no meta, there is no tournaments to turn to. Soon we're gonna have people actually on tables, like putting these rules into action. That's so sick. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited to see what people come up with. But yeah, it's great to have like all of the different viewpoints. Like Rob's crushing it with his army overviews right now.
Yep.
Square Based on YouTube or
Mm-hmm.
podcast, whichever you prefer, is where I'm from. Me and Rob have been doing a show about Old World for about a year now,
Yep.
which is funny. We've literally just been vamping for time for a year until about 2.5 months ago
And it
when
caught
things
us.
started really heating up.
Yeah, it caught us all off. Kind of caught us all off guard. Like right now, my local crew, we planned, and one of the guys, Neil, actually everyone else just did the elephant in the room. Obviously, Neil's not here tonight because I have Val joining me because I want to talk old world with Val
Sorry,
because
Neil.
yep, Neil's out. But Neil wrote this lovely Age of Sigmar hex map campaign supplement, and he started writing it like 6 months ago, finalized it,
Mhm.
and then Old World came out, and he's just like, well, shit. And we're like, no, we're still playing this. You put a lot of effort into this. We printed out those tiles. We're playing Sigmar at least once a month for the next year, but everything else is probably gonna be Old World in our universe. Um,
Yeah, from here, man, I've got like this big, like I've slowly wound down my 40K collection. Right now, I'm down to terrain and well, just a lot of orcs. All my painted orcs. It's a lot of stuff, and I have to like really resist starting to sell it off. To be honest with you, because like I can't see myself like the only other game I could see myself pivoting to from here is probably AOS. To be honest
mhm.
with you, I have there's the boner for 40K is completely gone. It's not twitching. It's not doing anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
gone. I don't know what happened. It's I am so incredibly jazzed for what Old World brings those from so many different angles. It's cool.
It is, and I'm blessed because I was enjoying you and Rob's podcast for the past year and a half because it so is my local scene because we've been playing. We never really, well, I won't say we never stopped. But probably about 2 years ago, we started getting back into it because I got the itch, and got it going again, and those guys were very
I
keen
remember
to
you
do it.
would
Yeah.
when I posted about my first Empire army. I'm sure if I went back, like the first my first thing was I saw this like painted Empire collection. I was like, "Fuck it, I'm doing it." Oh, sorry, is this a
No, you can swear.
I don't know
You're
where
good.
where we fall.
Nope. Anywhere, anything's fine.
Probably not. Probably tried not to. But anyway, this isn't an Australian podcast where I'm supposed to. The anyway, I picked up the secondhand, really nicely painted Nordland army,
Mm.
and I swear you had to have been one of the first people to post on that. And I think yeah, you guys were gearing up for our sort of Christmas time Warhammer fantasy game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice little 12-person tournament for invitational, obviously, but I know I wanted you to come down, but obviously it's Christmas time, it makes it hard. But hey, next year,
harsh.
Terathi Invitational, it's probably going to be earlier in the year, and it's going to be the Old World. That's already confirmed. So we'll talk deets once I get it
All right.
sorted, because you're not.
Yes.
I still
Even if you shit like literally last weekend in November, like that is like after that, like it to me the holidays are very inappropriately named. There's no holiday in the holidays. It's actually one of the most relentless periods of time of year for me
yeah.
for whatever reason.
Well,
So yeah,
yeah, November's not out of the question. That kind of comes down to what my schedule's like for the U.S. Open, because
yeah,
usually
yeah.
sometime in November they put in the grand finale, and I want to be part of that 40K grand narrative because that's super fun. That's the fun part of 40K right there, narrative. Right
The
now.
40K. So maybe it doesn't translate to like video blogs, but like I think it just doesn't translate to blogs. But like the times where I've tried to catch what the scene was like at those, I was like, well, it's not my cup of tea. Let's just say it didn't feel like something I would be into. But
No,
it
it's
doesn't mean that it's not fun, man. It doesn't mean it's not fun.
hey, one day we'll get a old world narrative going. Maybe not for the U.S. Open, but someone will run it. Whether it's you, whether it's me, we'll make Rob do it. How about that? He's got the venue.
Rob's talked a lot. He's talked a lot of shit about nerd. I would love to just be like, all right, Rob, make a narrative event. Let's see what happens.
He's probably dead
We
asleep
could
right
do it.
now, so now's the time to volunteer him for stuff.
I actually would. I would hope he was asleep, but I don't think he is.
That's fair, yeah. But
Let's see. Yeah, last message I got from him was 8 minutes ago. So yes, please
no,
go to bed, Rob.
yeah, Rob, go to bed. Or he's gonna randomly message you. He's like, "What are you doing on someone else's podcast?" He's like, "Shut up! How do you know?"
Oh,
No,
there's no secrets in this bromance. I let him know when I'm getting out there a little bit. So it's all good.
there you go, there you go.
But
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, what I want to do is because like, there's been a lot of shift lately on my
mhm,
channel to do old world stuff. And like I said, I got to
mhm.
know you real well because we met at the U.S. Open
Yeah.
series. Helped you set up cameras, probably poorly. I was probably just in your way, and that's fine. But you were kind, and you let me help out a
Oh,
little
not at
bit.
all. You were a beacon of kindness in a serious grind.
Oh,
So I appreciated every single thing you helped out with. Those were all each one of those was its own unique challenge.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
every little bit of help I got, I really appreciated.
they still are, but in a good way. Um, yeah, then like I think we kind of like just connected more on Facebook because the old world stuff, and then that GT popped up, and you bugged me, and I was just like, hell yeah. But
I don't even think you thought about it.
no, I was
I
just
think
like,
you were like, yeah, I'm there.
yeah, and then I had to figure out how to tell my wife I was leaving a day after Thanksgiving for the U.S., which honestly wasn't that big of a deal. It's you eat for a day, then you like we don't do Black Friday, so she's like,
Yeah.
okay, have fun. Um,
Well, there's no sales tax year round in Pennsylvania, so I mean, what's the big deal, right?
oh no, we're 6%.
You're six. I thought is it?
No,
I know there's busloads of Canadians
New Hampshire.
that come down. Maybe it's luxury goods. There's something that doesn't have sales tax in Pennsylvania
I mean,
because there's definitely like shopping tours of Canadians that come down
you know what?
specifically to
I
Pennsylvania.
wonder if they go to Wheeling, which is right next between Pennsylvania and Ohio, that part of West Virginia. There's
Okay.
probably that's where the casinos are at, and I bet that they probably have some sort of taxing there because that's whatever.
All right. Okay. Anyway,
Regardless, but
pretty inside baseball there.
yeah, the little weird part
Also,
of
we got so
America.
you're a Yinzer, so we got to talk Bills Steelers at some point. I heard you guys doing a little. You
Hmm.
guys did a little football preamble on the last show.
Oh, we did. Oh, we did. Well, I mean,
Um,
Neil's kept Cleveland, so I gotta talk my shit. But
well, I mean, Bills are playing the Steelers.
yeah, it's interesting because the Bills are what got us into the playoffs pretty much. It feels like by what they did. Now we gotta beat them. Yeah, they beat or no, was it Titans? Yeah, the Titans lost. That's what we needed. Bills
Yes.
beat Titans. So for a week we were friends. Now we're enemies.
Well, hopefully the Bills are struggling at just like winning games outright. Like every game has to be this like dramatic friggin' nightmare. Actually, the last game of the season it was actually Miami they played, and I fell asleep with my son after reading him his nighttime story, and I woke up at 12:30, and it was the perfect way to watch a Bills game. Just like go to go to bed hopeful, not have to have a heart attack for 3 hours. Wake up, they won, perfect. I hope to be able to take the cryogenic approach to all future Bills games.
The Steelers method is very much we play to the level of our competition. So if you gave us the Chiefs right now, we'd probably play a really fantastic game and try and keep pace. But you give us the slop, you give us the Patriots, we'll play like worse than the Patriots. It's a constant heart attack. We don't know what team we're gonna get, and that seems to be just always the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of like new beginnings and a new era in
Hmm.
old world, we see Bill Belichick going down.
Yep.
Pete Carroll fired. Nick Saban over in the college game retired. This is truly a new era, not only
It's
for Warhammer but for the great American game of football.
I mean, there's rumors that Tomlin might step away after this year for the Steelers. Not he's not doing a bad job, but he's not doing a great job, and maybe he wants to step away, personally and find a new home to see if he can mix things up, which would be would be scary for Pittsburgh for one reason that because that means we could potentially end up with Belichick.
No way.
That
How
that
old is Mike Tomlin?
he's not.
He's young.
He's
He's
young.
50. He's 51.
Yeah, he's young. I
Uh,
I don't think he'll stop coaching,
looks
but he
good.
might stop coaching Pittsburgh, is the rumors.
Yeah. I wonder of those guys which guys wind up somewhere else. But anyway,
Yeah. But
How about that old world, pal?
Old World is fantastic. And then yeah, like I said, that's why you're here, so we can learn more about you, point people
Hmm.
towards your show, and also just enjoy Old World. Like, what about that pre-release? Like, how was it for you? Not let's. To me, the queue system worked. I know other people had issues, but tell me, what was your perspective from this pre-release? Like, what did you go for? What were you concerned about? Any issues? Did you temper
I
yourself?
what I did. Well, I didn't. I mean, for some people, like you didn't fucking ever yourself. But I did. Like a couple things happened actually that really did help. One, for whatever reason, Dice didn't make it to North America
Yeah.
because I don't know if that ship is on the wrong side of the Houthi rebels in Africa or something. But yeah, it didn't make it. So so I didn't have to be tempted by. I think it's over $50 Canadian per tube of dice,
Yeah, it was 42
which I
US.
think yeah. So yeah, we're usually 20% above that, so that tracks. And then so I didn't wind up having to get the dice, but I did get all the cards and I got all the books and I picked up the Bretonians because I don't have any men at arms, so there's a beefy unit in
Mm-hmm.
there, and I really do like those little guys. I think they're great. And obviously I want a Duke or a Baron on a Pegasus.
Yeah.
Super annoyed that the BSB is another sprue. I've totally
It's
went.
just the top, right? The Pegasus is the same, or is the Pegasus different?
Everything else is the same. It's just like I guess there's a the Lord or Hero sprue, and then they swap that out, and that becomes there's a BSB sprue. But
Gotcha.
when I read the original announcement for it, I read it as it makes 3 different kits. And so I was stoked. I was like, that's sick, man. Like no matter what, like if you go with the Baron or the Duke, you'll still have the banner arm. You can just slap that on whomever you want. They can be your BSB.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong.
Nope.
Nope. Sorry, can't do it that way. But that's fine. That's fine. So I didn't buy the BSB in the standalone box. That's true. And I didn't grab any of the other like side kits. I was thinking hard about the I was talking about on Squarebase. I was talking about the Grail Reliquary and the Grail Pilgrims, who I do like. They're quite charming.
Yep.
But $180 Canadian for just the Reliquary, relic. I don't know, relic.
Reliquary.
Um,
That's not a new
well,
word.
no, I think that's sisters. I think it's RELIQUE. It's like relique.
Really.
Anyway, and I balked at that. I did balk at that. So I hope I didn't get anyone purchasing that, and then I chickened out. But also Highland Miniatures, who's a great Patreon slash STL maker. They've just gone full bootleg mode,
Oh, are they
and
cute? Yeah. Not even
they've
trying to
done.
hide it.
Yeah, once upon a time, I felt like they were kind of putting their own spin on stuff, but their Bretonians are just Bretonians.
Well,
So
I guess
this month they had the Grail relic, and so I think if I feel that I need them, I'll probably print them off.
well, I
But
guess if they do.
I gave GW close to $1,000, so that's fine.
Oh, there you go. I suppose if Highland Miniatures uses the old fleur de lis instead of the new one that GW has, technically aren't they safe? So just making French knights
Maybe
then.
I don't know. I'm not an IP lawyer. I don't know exactly where things start and stop. Yeah, they're just making French knights, but even just the dimensions of them,
Mm-hmm.
like although they're like Highland sculpts in very much a heroic scale. So like big hands, big faces. But they also make their models at 32 millimeters, so they'd be more at home in like the OS scale. And it's also interesting to notice that things like the Foot Knights, like the Foot Knights of the Realm that are coming out, when you look at them side by side
Mm-hmm.
with some of the Men at Arms, like they're clearly at the new scale of that GW works with, which is roughly 32 mil.
Yeah.
And
28 heroic, whatever you
and
want to
that's
call it.
jarring. Like it is a significant jump. And at the rate that they seem to be refreshing these lines, there's going to be a lot of scale mismatches, but that's fine.
I mean
That's the way the games are always.
that already exists. Like if I look at my high elves and I have my swordmaster, like my block of 40 that I have, here's all the Island of Blood ones and here's the old metal ones. Same thing with White Lions. I don't think I have any of the old metal Phoenix Guard. Maybe like one or two. So like I don't have it there, but like even that,
Yeah.
you could see the creep there. I'm sure it's just gonna get worse and worse. Although I'm
And I mean, I like a lot of people like object to the bigification, but I personally love it. I think I really love the
mhm.
sculpts that GW comes up with. I think that's the only reason I was bummed about when we first knew that Old World was going to be mostly old range, old models. I guess I was mostly bummed just because I was excited to see, what would a 2020 3 version of Tomb Kings look like. Like what would
Oh
they do
yeah.
with Skeleton Horsemen? What would they do with these things?
Hmm.
And to not get that full force of GW's sculpting might was a little bit of a lunchbox letdown. But those of us that were paying attention had a lot of months to work through all of those emotions. It's been interesting watching the internet catch up to where all like
Yeah.
the super nerds have been for a while.
Yeah, I can't remember how many. Like, so I was on Warhammer Weekly last night with Vince to talk Old World, and like almost every episode I've done since that last article about the whole legacy and support, like it's
Oh
just like
man,
hey, we knew mostly about this one 10 sentence line is the issue right now. Don't worry about the other parts that you're also worrying about. It's fine, but um yeah, no,
I mean, I
it's
know I
fun seeing them
probably
catch up.
yeah, I got to likely should probably soft shoot around it, but it does seem kind of like it's a questionable call.
Yeah.
The legacy stuff. I don't know how much. Obviously, I'm a proponent of it. Definitely, everything that the insiders have been saying out of the corner of their mouth about the legacy armies is that they're, at least they appear to be at least on par with all the grand armies
Yep.
in Forces of Fantasy and Ravening Hordes. There should be no reason not to play with them amongst your friends or at any independent tournament or event. It did seem strange that they would come out so forcefully against them, and who knows the exact motivations behind that. I've speculated a bunch of different stuff, but either way, it's a head scratcher, and I just hope that the community just decides to ignore that, and
I
everyone gets to play.
I feel like the community has, in essence, like the podcast and shows are out there, like mine, yours, and just every single person's like, yeah, if it's an event I'm running, they're allowed, and it was kind of like, okay, this community too, like there was so much comp back in the day. Obviously, they went to ninth
Yeah.
age and did all that stuff. Warhammer Armies projects, because I refuse to call it the other word. um,
Yeah.
Whap, yep. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's if they said something that we don't like, such as that, okay, it's like, okay, cool, thanks. Anyway, here's what we're gonna do, because you kind of memed on it, but put it very correctly. It's like, we're going to do this anyway. Once it's out, like once it's out of your hands, like it's out of your hands. We'll do what we want, and we will.
Yeah.
You either choose to adapt to us, like Sigmar did when Sigmar launched, or you'll be separated from us, which I don't want the separation. That's my only fear from all this. Isn't that I can't play my Dark Elves, or I can't play my, you know, whatever legacy army that's out there. I can't start a Skaven army. It's more of, I don't want to see this game get separated from the core people making it at Games Workshop, because I think that's when things get off the rails. I'm not saying that we need to accept everything they say and just bow to them entirely with this stuff, but we need to
Mhm.
work with them. They need to work with us. And I think it's been voiced that people don't like that statement, but it's also like, we're going to do this anyway. We just understand that at these places it will not happen, which is, sure, it is what it is.
Well, it seems so um out of left field, just because of like the general vibe of Old World is very 90s GW in a lot of senses. And
Mhm.
this might be something that people who have been engaged with SDS games, they might already be used to, whether it's Horus Heresy, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, or whatever. It's a lot more hands off. There's rules for there's tons of rules in these books for units that don't have models. There's a lot of stuff that you will have no choice but to hobby up yourself or find an alternative.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, out of the gates, it's interesting that they would comment on tournaments because, well, I mean, if you were starting from scratch and you wanted to be GW only, really your only options are stuff from the AOS range and Bretonians and Tomb Kings.
Right.
So like there's not a lot. Like I don't know how many people will be able to do I don't know how GW can run an event really. There's just not enough. There's just not enough stuff aside from all of the various armies that people have in their closets that they held on to and all that stuff or sold to me.
And
So
me.
yeah,
Trust.
it just but like from everything from like the points level to the
Mhm.
size of the table, to like just a lot of important decisions. Some of the models have variable base sizes, like it could be this or this.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah.
Like they did not take a stand on basically anything. It has been very classically, the game. We've made the game. Go out and multiply. Have fun with it. Like except for don't use the legacy armies, which is strange, because if it just seems to me like it's something that they committed to doing and
Mhm.
seemed to at a very late hour decide that no, actually that's a dumb idea. We shouldn't have done this, for whatever reason they view it, and they try to put the genie back in the bottle. And I hope that the PDFs still show up on time and are released in a reasonable period of time from after launch, and especially in light of how well things sold, one has to hope that they've met any goals that they had hoped for with the game. I know it sure feels like online, although I'm in an echo chamber at this point. Feels like a lot of anyone who's producing fantasy or old world adjacent content is, definitely getting record viewership
Yep.
and lots of people interested in seeing things. Finding out everyone is a former fantasy player that, especially in the tournament scene, that wishes they could have been playing fantasy this whole time. So like this game has got legs, and it just seemed really strange to at the last second say actually half of you guys you can't play, which is basically what I took issue with. So
Right. And
hopefully
I'm glad
hopefully things
they said
go
it
ahead.
they said it before the pre-order day, thankfully. But also it's like that's hurting
Literally the day before.
yeah. That's
Literally
hurting
the day before. Yeah.
and I think what like I said, most of the community, the people who are just like, yeah, we're gonna play this anyway, or like we've been around and following this, we knew there wasn't gonna be support, we're just ignore this line. But like, it did break my heart whenever I jumped onto the old world Facebook or Twitter and someone just going, "Am I not allowed to play this game?" Like, they were just like, they
Yeah.
just globalized it, because that's what happens, and then just rapid fire. It's like, no, you can play. You are perfectly viable to play. You are welcome. Bring out your Skaven. Let's have a good time.
Yeah, and the irony is, if you're playing Skaven, you're better supported than the core factions. Like,
Yeah,
if you're playing, basically all of the legacy factions are more accessible to a new player than basically everything except Bretonians and Tomb Kings.
yeah,
And maybe Warriors of Chaos, but even then, like you'd be buying the new sculpt AOS stuff, which is not what they're going to release when the time comes. The studio Old World Warriors of Chaos army that's in the books is very much the old, standing shoulder to shoulder guys.
this way.
Like
Yep.
it's,
Yeah.
so I think, anyone who does politely ignore the GW's bizarre plea to not buy models from Games Workshop, such a bizarre world, is going to have a really pretty army, and we'll have lots of opponents. I sure hope. But yeah, so hopefully it becomes a non-issue. The other thing is that I think, as a company, um, because they wrote those 7 factions, so someone thought that they should be in the game. I like to think that's probably the game designer.
Yeah.
And at some point they thought, it's not right to start this game without those factions, because that's totally something they could have done. They said, nope, we're coming out with 9 factions. Whatever reason, we can't do those other guys. They're
Yeah.
not in the game.
We're
And
hyper focused on this world, sure.
yeah, and then this is what it is. You're gonna have to deal with it. That would have been a very GW style of an approach. So they didn't do that. They wrote all 7 of those armies, and again, from what I understand, I haven't seen them firsthand yet. They're perfectly on par with everyone else, and I laugh too, like this, like you don't want to use those guys in tournaments because they're not going to get ongoing support and rebalancing. It's like, well, guys, the Bretonian book was written in 2004, and
Yeah.
people are still using that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how many erratas it ever got. So, if the rules are written well enough, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the people can sit around and wait. And I think if the demand is strong enough, which
It
it feels
clearly
like
is.
it's there,
Yeah, if you go on the web
feels
store
like
right
it's there.
now, the only things you can buy is what the arcane, not the arcane. I think you can buy the arcane journals, You can buy the Army books. You can't buy the core book, and I think you can buy the Tomb Kings box. I think that's all that's left in North America. Maybe the card
Yeah.
sleeves.
Yeah, Tomb Kings did not sell out. Actually, Tomb Kings looked quite available if you wanted to dabble in Tomb Kings, which is that was a bit of a bummer to me. I was hoping to see the full sellout, but like
Yeah.
a lot of things did sell out. I mean, I think there can be no doubt that this was a sales success, at least so far.
Yes.
And they would need sustained success, to get them to maybe undo some of their stances, but we'll see. I think it does feel like a game that's already telegraphing that it's meant to be a sort of a long unfolding story, and I don't know if that means it escapes the 3-year new edition cycle or not. I pine for a 4-year or maybe even a 5-year cycle, and maybe just a nice, pleasant, steady release pace would be great. But
Yeah.
I also want to be able to see people who want to engage with it, want to play, find that they're able to get things that they want and stuff like that. So we'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I'd like a 4 or 5-year cycle. The 3-year cycle, like I play Sigmar and 40K, and I can keep up with Sigmar. 40K, I just walk up every time like, all right, what am I doing again? At least I'm Eldari and I can just break stuff, but it's hard to keep pace with that. So I hope for a slightly slower, not too slow, but no, it's
and you never know. Like this, I mean, if Old World is, if it does have the staying power and the support that I think it does, because again, one thing I've said on Squarebase a lot is just the idea that like, in a lot of ways, fantasy died so that GW could live.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And that's not because killing fantasy was a good decision. It was actually because killing fantasy was probably a terrible decision. And releasing AOS the way it was released was a terrible decision. And, like I'm sure made with the best of intentions, but nonetheless had not the effects that they were looking for. And what it forced was a big thawing in the company and, and a massive amount of outreach, re-engagement with customers, with community leaders. Witnessing that was amazing. I remember listening to a podcast when the first GW Facebook page appeared, and the host said, "Oh no, that's fake. That's fake. That's not real."
Yeah, why would they do that?
I couldn't literally wouldn't believe that GW would start a Facebook page again. Like that's how deep and suspicious the two parties were. It was a bit like it was like U.S. and China. It was GW versus its customers,
or U.S.
but
and
there
Russia,
was this,
or U.S. and Iraq,
or U.S. Russia, sure. But there's this great thawing, right, and a re-engagement. I think 8th edition 40K, from in my experience, and also the original General's Handbook, for the players who played AOS, were these really cool collaborations. That's the way it felt. It felt collaborative.
Well, it very much was. I lived in that because I went to Sigmar and I was like a little person on Twitter, and like there wasn't many of us, so when GW was coming to Adepticon, me and my friend Tyler, we reached out and we set up a meeting with Andy, Smiley, Pete Foley, and like the rules writers, like Jess and Ben. Like it was one of the highlights of my hobby life, because they're just like, yeah, let's go. And we filled the room with people from the US who were like community leaders and top players, whatever we could based upon like my knowledge. And that's where things formed. I think out of that, the first playtest community formed for Sigmar, and then they started doing that for 40K as well. And it's just like, yeah, and like it expanded. And you are right, it did make a huge impact to see Games Workshop reach out and be willing to and listen. And I won't lie, like Sigmar's a great game. It's fantastic.
I think Sigmar is like as far as like a threat as far as Old War is concerned, Sigmar is the safest. I think if anything, people come from 40K, not Sigmar. It's a very unique scene. Like the players that play it are it's a very hard fought, organically grown like customer base that they have built out of Sigmar. And I'm really, really happy that game has developed. And I love too now that Old World is here, that like sort of that is a completion to the puzzle, right? Like you have, for me, I become more interested in the future of like what happens after the Old World, aka the Mortal Realms and AOS and all that stuff. than I was before when the past didn't exist. If that makes any sense at all,
Oh no,
just kind of makes it more of a whole a continuum that I think is really great. So
what's great,
that was cool.
I loved living the end times. I think it, as an elf player specifically, it was one of the best send offs and ending to a story that I could hope for, because then you saw, talked about the cyclical nature, and then you saw the elf gods become the new gods and all that. But the biggest complaint for the longest time, and I still hear it today for Sigmar, is man, the lore is just not great. And it's like, okay,
Hmm.
okay, you're coming into Sigmar, that's wonderful. Let me tell you about the old world. Oh, I don't want to hear about that. Like, but there's where your lore's at. If you, and like with
Yeah.
this game coming in, old world coming into play now, I think a lot of people who never looked at it go, oh, let me see what's going on, and go like, oh, what Tyrion and Teclis, what were they doing right now? What's going on? Why they're not gods? What's happening? And it's only going to enrich that. And I do like things too where now that we've seen the end into the new thing, we can see those nods as they recreate new models. My favorite bit right now is that Lady Elise
Hmm.
model, because
She has an elfin. She's got an elfin
very clearly an elf
wand.
wand, and it's just like, man, they would have
Yeah.
never done that before, but now that we know, wink, wink, nod, nod, here you go.
And I think there's also within, like, I mean, there's a lot of latitude as well within um, the world, Chaos winning, Archaon doing his thing. Within that, there's also a lot of latitude to go back and maybe clean up some of the gnarlier bits or like allude to a different ending, I think, in some ways. There is no doubt that like you're the only maybe the only person I've ever heard defend the end times lore.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, I go so far as to defend
the,
Teclis. All right, I think
uh,
Teclis was the only one trying in the end times. He's the only one that cared to risk it all to try and save it all. And everyone hates Teclis. He's like, oh, he's the village idiot. That's the joke. Like, no, he tried.
yeah.
He even
Well,
sacrificed his own goddess in the last attempt to do it. It's like, sure, he failed, but you got to try.
yeah. Everyone was, well, I guess, yeah, he went out swinging. But like yeah, I find it interesting that like in the fullness of time there is the opportunity to do a better version of that. But I mean that's so far off. Like who knows how long they even take to get to the Great War Against Chaos. Like you even noticing like there's some like head scratcher missing units. Like Warriors of Chaos don't have skull crushers.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything that's like particularly demonically charged seems not to be in the game yet. And obviously, by the time you get to the Great War Against Chaos,
They'll
there
be
is a
there.
great rift, and there's going to be lots of demonic activity and all that fun stuff. So like it does feel like they're leaving a lot of runway to just do this narrative arc. So to even think forward, is like that's probably
Yeah,
that's a
eh,
lifetime away.
yeah. As a high elf player as well, I was excited because I was kind of mentally bracing. Because I think early on we saw the hints, especially in like Bretonian, like not everything's in the rule book. There's going to be some things left out for lore reasons or whatever the
Mhm.
decision is. And as a high elf player, I was like, okay, well, sword masters are going to be around. They'll travel around the world. They always have. Phoenix Guard,
Mhm.
maybe not so much. I could see White Lions in a small format because they might go with like princes and stuff. But I was like mentally ready. Like,
Mhm.
why would the Sisters of Avalor never leave? Why the hell do they care about the old world? So I was prepared to have a slim down list. And when I saw the high elves get everything,
Mhm.
I was actually a little bit shocked. I was excited. Like, okay, I can bring my Phoenix to the old world. This is great. I didn't expect he would leave the island either, but here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also other interesting things, like for example, the I don't even know what you call them in fantasy because I never ran them, but the squig hoppers.
Yep, Squig Hoppers.
Um,
I think it's the
so
name. Yeah.
the Boingrot Bounders, and what's the armored version of that in AOS?
Oh, Knights,
Anyway, there's
Squig Hopper Knights or something. It's.
well, if you look at the unit card for those guys in Old World, they have like armor upgrade options, and they can like carry lances and stuff, which is not what their original model would have let them do. So like that's like a designed crossover that again, like I wonder sometimes like how much of the like the very specific setting that then like the no crossover thing was always there, and like how much of it was something that came in right at the end,
Mm-hmm.
or at least in more recent history as they started trying to like strategize this rollout. So yeah, like there's it's interesting to see what's made the cut into old world and what's been left behind. And there's lots of 8th edition models. Like I think I may have done that Warhammer player thing of not of like reading, adding a sentence or not reading a sentence fully.
Oh
I
yeah,
assumed like all models would be supported, much like the 8th edition 40K transition included every model in the range, including a lot of stuff that either never existed or was out of print. And there's tons of 8th ed models that just don't appear to have any rules, especially all the Forge World stuff is missing. Like it's interesting that like there's still lots of things out there. For example, guys like Matthias Eliasson to get out there and, and read some rules for, or just port them over. It probably wouldn't be that hard to take an 8th edition, unit sheet and just bring it into Old World.
yeah. I mean, points seem to be
Just
very similar across the board
yeah.
from what it was in 8th edition. Obviously, I think the magic items are the things that might change the most because they're different. But yeah, points don't seem that far off from what we are kind of used to mentally building with.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all. Yeah, all that range stuff. And like in fairness too, something that really blew my mind was when we first saw the pre-order list. And like this is half of the stuff. Like this is just wave one of Bretonia and Tomb Kings. Like there's still more to come.
Right.
And it was a crazy amount of stuff. Like
Yeah.
the web cart was overflowing. And to think that there's 9 like supported factions that they got to get through, and then on top of that another 7 that I would suspect they'll get around to, and then on top of that probably
Kislev,
I don't know, your bet,
Cathay,
yeah, your guess is good as
thoughts, yeah.
there's going to be some wild cards. Like they're not going to not have like a fully new army release. Like that's gotta happen. I mean that's their moneymaker right there, is like a totally new army.
I would buy a Kislev army right now if you made it 100%. I would be like, take it all.
I saw someone on Facebook. I've never really seen someone take like a modern painting approach to the old Kislev armies. So they always kind of looked a bit derpy to me. And it was never like, some people really are super into them, and that's great. But like I've never seen one that was like, holy. And this person had done it, and it was amazing. So to have like that level of painting on top of like maybe some like really nice new models, like that'd be pretty all right. And Cathay obviously is out there, and the wording of the back in the Warhammer Total War, the Total War Warhammer 3 sort of hype build up. The wording in those things is that these are armies in the old world. And again, this is a long time ago now. This is like 3-4 years ago. 3 years ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
4 years ago was the start of all this, I think.
It's 2019. At least 2019. Yeah, okay. 2019. So anyway, maybe 2 years ago then is when they did the Cathay and the Kislev sort of teasers. And they talked about how they wrote like an actual army book, like an 8th edition. They talked about writing an 8th edition army book, for the devs of Total War, which that'd be cool to be able to see.
It's one of those things that it's probably there. They probably, it's probably not tested. It's just like in creation, but it's on some devs hard drive right now in the office on the OneDrive or whatever, just sitting there, and we're all just like, man, just a peek would be great.
Yeah, it's a cool relic.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like, and Cathay's so fascinating because it does seem like a likely addition to the old world, and for all the hoopla they've made about it being very focused on the old world, like the faction that they very well may bring is going to be on the other side of other side of the world, which hey, I'm not gonna besmirch them for that if that's what they do.
I mean, look at it this way. You could always have years down the line, we have the invasion cycle where Cathay comes over, and that's when we get like maybe the lizardmen come out from Lustria and the dark elves start raiding again. Like they could do cycles like that. I mean, that what I do like is that the world's open. I do appreciate in the last of the articles from the devs, they talked about they're not necessarily going to just stick to the straight timeline. They might bounce around a little bit. I got an idea. Let's do it. So like, we might even go before the 2279 a little bit, or past it. I mean, obviously we won't go into the old world end times setting. I don't think we're going too far.
Probably not.
Outside of where we're at, but it's fun that there's a lot of options.
Well, what's interesting is about like them being very set on a specific time and place is that fantasy was always anachronistic, like as far as its special characters were concerned, its army compositions were concerned. I mean, if you look at something like Total War, which is what vast majority at this point, let's be honest, of people would, probably think of first as like a touchstone of the game, not the tabletop. It is all of the special characters who are, all sort of inhabiting that world at the exact same time, and they've in the lore timeline are from all kinds of different periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Grom the Paunch, running around at the same time as Karl Franz. That's not how it goes,
Mm-hmm.
so. Um, it's the same thing goes for how special characters are presented in the books. You had Gorbad Ironclaw from the Orcs and Goblins, who had this great Wa that invaded the Empire before they had gunpowder.
Mm-hmm.
That's how like far back in the timeline that is. Like this idea that like the von Karsteins are all dead. Well, like that's actually pretty recent history, actually, as far as where we are in the old world timeline. And so like it would be one of my wish lists is if they ever do bring vampire counts into the game, which I gotta think they will at some point, maybe they go backwards and they do a little Vampire Wars
Yeah.
campaign
Cool.
supplement or something like that to bring them in.
I mean, I would love
Um,
personally to do a campaign supplement where it's like the War of the Beard again. I know that's really far
mhm.
back, but with the dwarves and the elves, their technology is never changing. So maybe dwarves don't have gyrocopters. I don't remember if they did during that book series, but just
Pro-
seeing where they
yeah.
could go is fun.
Yes. And this is one of the things and again, not to brag too much, but it is one of my least favorite chestnuts is one of the great justifications for blowing it all up was that the narrative space was too tight.
Oh,
Like they didn't have enough freedom to be able to do stuff in this tiny little one world that they had. It's like, you mean like planet Earth? Do you think there's not
yeah.
enough stories to tell on planet Earth?
Wait.
The entire history of planet Earth? So it always rang a little hollow for me that was one of the justifications. But
Yeah,
there is
fair.
so much, in fact, like even around the old world, you got Talea, Estalia, Araby, and like a lot of people are like, oh, you can't do Araby. I'm like, yeah, you could,
Oh my
man.
gosh.
Like
If you ever,
such an amazing,
it,
such a rich
yeah.
like source of mythological and historical figures that you could pull and very amazing, like do them such justice.
Yeah, if you want to
Oh man,
see a true like exploration of those random places in the old world, the best book series is the Gotrek and Felix because they roamed Lustria on
can we
random
go there?
places. They were in Araby for a little bit, like, but it's usually like a chapter or two, but it gives you
Yeah.
enough to go, what the hell's going on in this place? This is pretty cool.
I'm the one I'm in. I listen to them in audiobooks occasionally, and usually as a way to fall asleep. But the one I'm on, they're on like, what do they call this? Like the Doom Barge. What's the big floating zeppelin thing that the dwarves
Oh,
have? The Thunder Barge.
Thunderbarge,
They're on
yeah.
like a they're on like a Thunder Barge going up into the Chaos Wastes.
Mm-hmm.
Is the story. And it might be Demon Slayer as a matter of fact. And I just love it. It's so much fun. But like the settings and places and stuff are just very evocative. And like I don't know, the old world is a really fun place to get lost in. It's also got a really strong tradition of literal role play
Yeah.
through the Warhammer fantasy role playing books, which actually have developed these places and spaces, far beyond any of the tabletop books ever did. So that they are, quite like it's quite a fleshed out, lore and defined place, which is always fun and something like one of GW's true strengths is having such like a rich, even though I'm a gamer first and foremost, and like probably hobbyist. I love the toys and I love having the armies. But like they are grounded in like
And
even if
there,
I only know the broad strokes, it feels like there is a truth, like there's substance behind all of these little things.
well, there's
And I think that's particularly cool.
there's a truth in it too. Like as I think back more and more, I know the old world very well, but there's a lot of like it's high elves. Like I know about the Ten Kingdoms, but I try to think down to like how often was I like in one of those kingdoms for a length of time. I can think of a couple book
Mhm.
series like was it with Alathanar and Nagarathe and all that sort of stuff, and like Avalorn with the Tyrion and Teclis ones, but I'm like I never really got to see much of Lothern. I never got to see much of Illyrian or like the gates. I knew where the Dragon Gate, the Eagle Gate, You know, all those I knew where they were at, but like, man, even just like a story just inside there that wasn't a battle. Like there was so
Right.
much we could tell in there. But there's something I did want to hit on with you specifically because you're the only other
Yeah.
person out there that I've ever heard talk about this, and that
Okay.
is the potential of, I guess, alternate timelines or multiverse, if we want to go with a
Oh
Warhammer
yeah.
fantasy
Yeah. Yeah.
multiverse.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think you and I are in on that. I don't know who else is out there, but man,
Well, I mean, fundamental. It already is. It already is a multiverse.
yeah,
You have the end times timeline, which they've committed to.
yep,
They've said that this is that timeline. But there's the original Storm of Chaos timeline where Archeon doesn't quite do the trick, but obviously, and there's a really wonderful interview with Gab Thorpe with Jordan Sorcery,
mm-hmm,
and he talks about the development of that. It was a summer campaign, and essentially it was an attempt to do the end times without, the end part. Essentially, change up the settings so that there was, the opportunity for narrative advancement and all that kind of stuff. And it sounded to me as though it was one of the reasons Gav wound up leaving was that the direction was no, we're not. We're going to unwind a lot of it, and that's actually
mm,
the story of Eighth Edition.
right,
A lot of the books unwinds a lot of retcons out a lot of that Storm of Chaos sort of changes to the lore, and then eventually it comes to the end times, and they kind of do the whole thing. They just take it all the way instead of sort of halfway.
and
There's that. There's of course there's Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is an alternate
technically,
universe.
yep, they just find the book of Nav
Uh,
instead.
yeah. And there's
The
actually
the MMO
go ahead.
was the MMO was a alternate timeline too, because in that Archeon failed and there was a Tzeentch ever chosen.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, yeah, that's a whole separate timeline, and like I think there's like 3 or 6 books about it, and like the comic book. I have all of that because I love that MMO. But yeah, that's technically an alternate timeline because it was post Archeon as a failure of something. Like they didn't talk about it. It was just like here's the new ever chosen. He was like a Tzeentch guy. It's like all right,
Yeah.
it's
And
cool.
maybe they took the post Storm of Chaos a sort of
Hmm.
setting and ran with it in that direction. I think, and there's no reason, like honestly, like GW pivots all the time, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
there's no reason why such a thing couldn't be. But also, I think it's kind of beside the point.
yeah. It's just fun.
Like
The what ifs are always
yeah,
fun. We know what we're
yeah.
in, but like what ifs are fun.
What ifs are fun and also very zeitgeisty right now. Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is confusing as hell because they've really embraced some of the most wacky elements of sort of the comic book narrative of like having multiverses and different instances of the same person and all that kind of stuff. And we are, of course, in a setting that has the realm of chaos, and like trying to break through its gates at all times. There's
Well,
no reason
actually,
why
I, I
there
I-
couldn't be something like this.
I'll put this out there too. It was in one of the early. I'm not sure if it was. I think it was the second audio drama for the Gotrek's return to the old world. And it's near the end, and Tzeentch is trying to tempt him. There's a realm gate that would take him to the place where, if you remember, it's spoilers for the end of Gotrek and Felix in the old world per se, but
It's fine.
obviously Gotrek gets separated from Felix for his reasons, and Felix is like semi buried in like this cave, like on the side of a mountain, and like there's. It sounds like he might be rescued, but like that's kind of where the story ends. He's writing down the doom of Gotrek that he's finishing his story just in case he runs out of air before he's saved.
Uh
But
huh.
Gotrek is shown a realm gate that goes back in time to the old world, and he was considering pulling Felix through.
Hmm.
So it's like, and not take that whole thing aside. He chose not to. Well, whatever. But the fact that they've
They leave
they
that
left
narrative option open. Yeah.
that's there. Like there could be a realm gate that like opens up and boom, this random Stormcast finds himself back in the old world. Just one.
Sure.
It's just like, what the
Just one
heck
dude.
would
Yeah.
he do? Like that would be a fun story. Him just walking around, just like punking the Chaos Warriors that think they're BA, and he's just like, you're chaff.
Yeah. 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 It'd be cool. But I for one am uh pretty satisfied with actually the place they decided to put this game, like narratively. In a lot of ways, the Great War Against Chaos is kind of what feels like the present day should have been. Um,
Mm-hmm.
hold on a second. Your rest will be set up to
No,
Okay,
you're good.
cool. No, I just making I got Windows Update wanting to turn my computer off. So if I vanish, I'll be back. Don't worry.
All right.
The but yeah, like I really do feel like the like because you have the Empire as sort of has been infighting, and it really isn't the Empire that we from the end times timeline
Mm-hmm.
would know it as. It's actually like a bunch of squabbling city states and provinces. There's no real sort of unification of it at all
Right.
at this exact moment. Um, and yet all the other factions are kind of where they were ish. I'm sure the elves are doing elf stuff uh,
Yeah. No, I plan on doing
Bretonians are
yeah.
Bretonians, and everything sort of just feels like this is the right place actually for the narrative setting. And I don't need to think past it really.
Yeah, no, I'm personally I'm gonna be doing here soon a like not maybe a video series, most likely one video, since I think in the term of the High Elves, what were the High Elves doing at this time? Where was Tyrion, Teclis, and Ilariel? All that sort of stuff. Like what battles were recent, not recent. Just kind of think about that scope helps me put it in perspective. But yeah, no, I'm excited. And what's fun too is in the Mortal Realms, of Age of Sigmar, it's like the big thing that happened in the past was the end times. And when we were
Mm.
fighting through the end times, big thing that happened in the past was the Great War of Chaos. It's kind of like, what was that thing? We had some stories, and I'm glad we're not in it because being in it would just feel like you hit the ground running with narrative options and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to enjoy this lead up, and I can't wait to see that story unfold slowly.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I said this on Squarebase, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe the crux of whatever the narrative development is, of whatever tips off this rise of chaos in this setting. I assume it happens somewhere in the sandy dunes of the Border Princes. There will be some MacGuffin that is discovered and sort of moves things forward, and that'll be cool. But like again, that's who knows how many years down the road. I'm also it's interesting that the book that is being released by Black Library alongside this is quite understated. It was a First Night. Is that what it's called? It's a Bretonian book.
Something Lance,
Um,
Lords of the Lance,
First Lance, Lords of the Lance,
First Lance, something
Lord
like
of the
that. Yeah,
Dance,
there you go.
something like that. It's not very. Doesn't seem quite very. It doesn't seem very grandiose in its scope anyway. It's not like it's not like centered on any like what
Major
will be
point.
or
Yeah.
is major character. Yeah, it's more. It's very. It seems like much more of a setting establishing sort of a world building type grounding type novel.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I did pick that one up. That's actually I picked up
Oh,
the,
there
the
you go.
limited edition of that. My first limited edition ever. I splurged on that guy.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, like so it'd be interesting to see how they sort of build out that grounding and then go from there because it does feel like sort of been saying this about like Underworlds. The first edition of that was Shadespire, and I think a lot of people just still call it Shadespire to this
Yeah.
day. I wouldn't be surprised if the overarching brand, like if we go into another edition, if this is Warhammer the Old World, the next edition might be shifted somewhere else. It might have a different focus, like New World.
That'd be
Who knows?
fantastic. Yeah.
So yeah, like they do have lots of ways they can go with it, and what does seem really, really true and cool is that everything we know of the game, um, and it's quite a lot at this point, sure does seem like a very good iteration on what they've done in the past with the Warhammer rule set, and just seems really meaty. I'm very eager to actually start playing a game and seeing how this all interacts on the
Mm-hmm.
table.
I when I see the day that my book's going to arrive, and I hopefully I'm not away for work at that time, but I'm probably going to take at least a half day off of work to just sit and read it all. Like that,
Mm.
I look forward to that because that's when I'll start digesting it, and then I'll start playing games with it. But like I said, I'm enjoying the fire hose of content we have. I think you said it at the start of the show here. My favorite part about this is everyone's going, well, what's the best faction? Because that's what gamers we want to do, and everyone is going, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah,
And let's find
yeah.
out together.
There are some that do seem like clubhouse leaders. Elves are always a popular one.
Yep. Swordmaster Stonk's
But
high right now.
Swordmaster Stunk, Woodies of all like the Wood Elves seem pretty darn good.
Well, that I think
But
the wood elves are gonna be based upon the TO and the table.
like that's the thing. So this is something I think very underrated thing that I don't know. Again, I've been kind of focused on what we're doing. So
Sure.
although no, I've been mixing it up out there, but I don't know if I've heard enough people talking about the fact that line of sight is abstracted.
Yeah.
So hills block terrain. Hills block line of sight infinitely. Models base blocks line of sight. Forest block line of sight. So that
Your own troops brought
immediately
lock on
means,
site. Yeah.
yeah, that immediately makes it so that the table matters a lot, and
Yep.
like having, and it was sort of sad, not sad at all. It was interesting to see that for the most part, everyone who had sort of those day one battle reports, they were just sort of, they set them up like they were eighth edition tables, um, with not a lot of line of sight blocking in between and stuff to maneuver around. But I think that will become it'll be interesting to see um, how sort of, yeah, terrain layouts evolve, how people come
Yeah.
to like playing the game. I know that the ETC pack, and I'm sure anyone who's familiar with ninth age, which unfortunately I'm not really, would be very comfortable with the idea of like forests and hills blocking line of sight. That was a key point of their pack, which changed the game quite significantly, obviously, for anything that's shooting. Just the fact that the table, although the bases are bigger because of the way charges work and the way movement is, the table, sorry, the table is a 6x4, but the bases are bigger, so you'd think you have less space. But because charge ranges and threat ranges are shorter,
Mm-hmm.
the table as a result is now going to be bigger. I'll be very curious to see how maneuver works with that.
Yep. A
Um,
little bit
there
less
seems to be
restriction on
lot
maneuvering.
pushing. Also,
Yeah.
like lot. Well, yeah, there just seems to be a lot of opportunity to do cool stuff, and like there's so many more movement related rules, formation based,
Mm-hmm.
reforms, and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that's super curious, and I still haven't seen how it'll be interesting when the real gamers get their mitts on this, but frontages, widths,
Yeah.
like the opportunity to go super wide. And in general, it seems to encourage sort of a shallower, wider formation rather than the narrower and longer formations. I think were very common in eighth.
Yeah. Well, it's
So
like
I'm curious to see how that feels on the table.
yeah, because now it's with no step up, that's going to change how wide you're going to want to go because you want the bodies behind to step up to ensure you have bodies there to at least hold up the enemy. But I think too, at Square Base GT, I had a Lothran Sea Guard and Sea Helm, and I'd be charged instead of stand shoot. I would reform and get steadfast and be 5 wide and like 6 deep. Well, technically, I just put myself in marching column now. What does that mean?
Yeah, or like you've also got drilled as one of the USRs
Hmm.
in this, which allows you to change your formation before you move. Feels like you might be able to do that before you charge, if charging is movement.
Yep.
So you could be in a marching column, or you could be even just in sort of a more of a narrow formation, and then go as wide as possible to maximize your attacks on your frontage. Because you can reform up to 2 ranks, I think. So say even if you go from like a being 4 deep to 2 deep, suddenly you're very, very wide and you have a lot more guys swinging. And from what I think it works, the way it works is that guys who I think you remove from the outsides in, as far as like when you're imagining casualties,
Hmm.
I might be misspeaking there. But that would mean that like you do have to grind through a lot of guys before there's no one left to strike back. um, which anyway,
Yeah.
it's gonna be really really
It,
interesting.
I mean, yeah,
And
you're just explaining that we, Square Base, Strength Hammer, and all the content creators, we have a lot to talk about for the next couple of years. So,
Mhm.
and it's gonna be interesting to see like what sparks us as a community as we form, like what things pop up. It's like like I think the first debate you and Rob already talked about is 1999 versus 2000. It's great. I mean, the only
Yeah,
way
we kind of
we gotta just try it. There's gotta be events where they say this is what we're trying, see how it goes. Another event does a different way, see how it goes, and then we gotta talk about the terrain while that's happening too, probably. And like
well
yeah,
for the series of old world events Rob's thrown in Nottingham at the arena. If you are listening and you're in the UK or near Nottingham and you want to go, I think there's still tickets available. Um, not for the one that I'll be at, unfortunately. I know, guys, not to disappoint, but there I think another 2 or 3 events he's running right after that. Certainly for the one that I'll be at, which is the last weekend of March. I think we're going with 2,000.
okay,
But we're going to go with a rule of 3 for non-core and a rule of 6 for core. And so basically, if you're restricted more than that, if it's like 0 to 1 or whatever per 1,000, then it's the lower number. But essentially, one thing that does feel like a place the game would immediately go with the army building rules as they are, is you would have a lot of you would have MSU in a big way,
mm-hmm.
with a lot of the best single entity models being repeated a lot.
Right.
It also opens up a lot of opportunity for magic spam. And that's not necessarily terrible. I know AOS has a different sort of culture around this. It's been interesting. Rob and I clashing over this on this topic. I was shocked when he acquiesced and said, he actually didn't even acquiesce. He just sent me the rules he wants to use in the pack, and it had rule of 3, and I was like, what?
How dare you?
I wa- I wa- I got one. But no, I think he's sort of on board. The reason why I feel like that's probably a wise way to start is that, especially from an event meta perspective, and what you guys do in your games, guys, like in your clubs or at your events, you can use a restriction or you can not use a restriction. Play out of the rule book. That's fine.
Yep.
Is I just think that, especially when we start getting larger events, if they are sort of the out of the box, very loose building guidelines, we're going to see a lot of builds and armies that are, I think, a turn off to a lot of people, and I think they will be discouraging, a discouraging effect of whether or not someone wants to go into events. I think you want armies to look like armies, and the way that the army building rules are constructed definitely leaves a lot of opportunity to build armies that are going to be, the equivalent of Taudar from 7th edition
Oh
40K.
yeah.
Bringing in allies, and then only the best unit as many times as you possibly can. And that's, to me, that's not ultimately where, I mean, if that meta did develop, and it probably will, because not everyone's going to think restrictions are a good idea. I think that invariably, in my history of watching this, that type of unrestrained army building, generally speaking, does not stay unrestrained. The lid gets put on it eventually. I am curious, for example, to see, is there going to be an official, because they're talking about tournaments in their roundtable. Obviously, events are on their minds.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like people playing this, like people will play these things at tournaments or narrative events or whatever. So like I wonder, will there be some form of match play, sanctioned pack for this game that comes from on high? That would be super fascinating to see.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be surprising either. It would,
I I
they
mean, yeah,
nobody's done that kind of stuff.
if we have it at the US Open, like we have to have it created. So it's not out of the question that it won't exist because there's no reason they won't look to try to have these
Well,
there. But also I'm excited too because like there's the event in Sweden. It's obviously the square-based GTs over Nottingham. Adepticon's having one, so I'm not sure if their pack's out yet. But once I get the rules in my head, that's when I want to go look like, okay, oh, these people are doing TOs. Like, what are they trying? Like, what's it gonna look like? And we should try a lot of variations. But we all, as long as we can all, and I know Rob's good at this for Age of Sigmar, but like be able to collect that data and look through it. So as a community, we can come to better decisions overall quicker, as opposed to just this side of the country is playing this way, this side of the country is playing this way. Because even in Sigmar, when that started, it was so frustrating.
Yeah, I just think that I just think there are certain things that are a foregone conclusion. There is an intersection between spam and theme, of course. Like some things being spammed, or like repeated a lot in an army list, can be very themey.
Yeah.
And
Well, look at the
look
Arcane Journal,
appropriate.
the
But
Cetra's Chariot list.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, those are core units. Like you expect to see
True.
tons of core units,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
But uh, like that's not what I'm talking about. Like it's more like, yeah, I don't know, man. I saw 8th edition. I was there. I lived it, blow by blow, and all the way to its felt like a long time, but it actually wasn't. I think it was within the first year of its release. Would have been Adepticon, would have been Tyrants versus Poxwalkers. In Adepticon on the top table, it was like 9 or 10 flying hive tyrants.
Hmm.
Very good list. And I'd say a few weeks following that, we saw the rule of three get implemented into 40K, and then suddenly, like that really snapped it and that worked really well for 40K as far as like bringing the styles of armies you saw into some sort of a um, they looked a lot more like armies that you would expect to see
Right.
as opposed to just cramming all the best stuff that you possibly could in. There was some restriction, little economy of choice, and the game was just gangbusters all the way up to Space Marines 2.0. So like I think that one way or another, that if the event scene does take off, and there are lots of armies out there being played, and if they are out of the book as opposed to any sort of community comp applied, we'll see. I would suggest we'll probably see some pretty wacky lists
Oh
that
yeah.
are a bit of a turnoff to people who aren't gamers first, and what might ruffle might wrinkle their noses at those things, because even now, like with the I don't know how many gyrocopter lists that appeared
Oh my
briefly
gosh.
there, like evil theory crafting.
Yeah.
Even with that, like obviously that's a list that has vulnerabilities and can be counterplayed and things like that.
Well,
But
actually, I
like a
watched
unit.
before recording this. Mountain Miniatures did their stream, and it was dwarves versus beastmen, which was great to see something that wasn't Tomb Kings and Bretts for once. I mean, I saw a few,
Oh,
but
for
like,
sure.
but he had two gyrocopters, and uh, they didn't really do that much. So it's like, yeah, there's clearly vulnerabilities. Like, sure, you want to spam this, go ahead. It just means we're gonna know how to beat you eventually, and once we do, you're never gonna win a game again with that.
Maybe, but there's also lots of. I would say there's basically. I want people to get out first. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
And I
yeah.
would say there's probably more people who would be like you. We're also talking about a community that's going to be a lot of returning players, a lot of people coming back to the game, and their most recent memory was a tournament meta which they found. And it's funny, I have to use this word because Warhammer players are literally like this: offensive. They found the tournament meta offensive. It did not. It was so counter to their tastes
Hmm.
that they were offended by it and they didn't like the way the game played and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like the same thing. I felt the same way about people's opinion of tournament 40K when I started playing in seventh. Like they would see what was on the table in the seventh edition tournament game, and they were literally grossed out by it. Like it was like, how could you do this to this beautiful game? And then basically what happens there is then you get a situation where the players are blamed for being, gross whack dudes, like being these like try hard guys, just like
Yeah.
non-gentlemanly, which is the most
It's
bullshit
like, yeah,
word in the world. Whereas
the rules
they're
writer wrote it that
playing,
way.
the rules writer wrote it that way, right?
Yeah.
Like I never used. It took me a long time to understand truly the raw versus rules as intended thing. The
Yeah.
problem with rules as intended is that none of us are the rules writer. So everyone has this opinion of intention, but at the end of the day, if you're playing at an event, this is why I love events, is you're playing with the rules as they are in fact written, and because that's the only thing that we can agree on, that we know, that is knowable, and you play within the rules of those games. People will call people who are well within the constraints of the game a win at all cost player because they are playing within the rules of the game.
Hmm.
And that to me upsets me because that could easily be avoided by having constraints on the game where the gamers are still going to play as hard as they can. They're going to build a tuned up list that's going to beat the crap out of people, but it's going to look more acceptable to a wider base of players, if that
Hmm.
makes any sense.
Yep.
It's all to me, it's all about perception because like this is a game of aesthetics. It's a game of like again founded in lore, played with very intricate, delicate
Yep.
miniatures. Like these things actually matter massively. And I think ultimately the rule sets that have had some constraints on army construction are the ones that have been the most popular play in public formats, and I think you see that success in 40K in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in some elements of how they construct armies in AOS, I don't know, it might be a totally different thing. But yeah, that's where I am on that. And maybe I'm just fear mongering, and a lot of people will be like, "This guy is just let them play. We got to let the meta develop." It's like, well, the meta is going to develop, and people are going to buy a bunch of models that, like 6 months down the road, when they change their mind, they can't use anymore, and that's to me a much worse thing.
Yeah. I
Than
mean,
just having some constraints.
it's about being proactive as a community too. Like, do I want to see, like, I want to see events where it's just open and go, like a club, see what happens. But I want to see events, where you're restricting, and I want to see events with different restrictions. Like, where no one's out here like leading the charge, like this is how it has to be played. Let's try these different things and see how it goes.
Oh,
'Cause,
yeah.
like,
I'm out there. I'm out there saying this is how it has to be.
oh, okay. Well, that's if you're square best, rule of threes in place
No,
permanently.
I would say no. I think that would be rather unbalanced of me. I just want this to succeed, man.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
want people to want to come out to events. And the only thing I see being a hitch in the giddy up on this, and this is a game that's wildly complicated. The learning curve is going to be vertical.
Yep.
It's going to be hard to even be like competent at this game. The only hitch I see is just like unrestrained army building rules. And then the other thing too,
allies
is
my restraint to start. I don't like allies.
Exactly. Well, and to me, allies and spam go hand in hand.
Yeah,
I think those are two things that we've learned. We've learned those lessons in the past. Because the other thing too is that with unrestrained army list building, again, like this is essentially what you don't get to see is how this game actually plays, because you're gonna get a lot of skews, right?
Mhm.
So you're gonna get a lot of like real rock paper scissory type situations. And so we don't actually get to learn where all the like actual interesting creases are, where all the interesting nuances are, because a lot of people will go for raw power as fast as they possibly can. And when you put constraints on, it will invariably lower that concentration of power level in the units that you can choose. And then we're going to see like where are the powerful combinations. Like you don't even have to try hard if you can just click control V on the best units available to you. You don't have to look for all of those interesting interactions. You don't have to really put things through their paces necessarily. You lose a lot of the like cool design if that's where things swing. And who knows? Maybe there aren't enough things to do that with, but like you could run an entire army of just units of 5 wood elf archers right now, and that's going to rain a lot of death on people and be very, very, very tough to clear out.
I'll just look at that army and be like, all right, see you later. You win. I don't want to deal with that.
And there you go.
Yeah,
like
I don't want that.
And
I don't
that
want
is,
that. Yeah.
That's like frequently, and like you're a tournament player. Like you're a guy who's like seen some shit. Like you've seen wild stuff out there, right?
I want
like,
honest shit. Like when I went to Square Base, I was bringing a pain in the ass high elf army, 40 white lions, a Larial. But I only brought one eagle because I wasn't gonna do that little trick where you can't move and charge. I'm gonna be like, this is a tough unit, but I'm gonna fight you honestly. I don't mind that level of bullshit. It's the, I guess, NPE, non-player experience type thing, or it's just like, this isn't a game, this is just us waffling about till you win because I can't physically beat this because it's.
But but you're also the type of guys, if you came up against someone who did play 2 great eagles, you wouldn't be like, this guy had like no parenting. This guy has no morals.
Right. I'm like,
you know what I mean?
He brought it. It's in there. Let me see if I can get around it.
He brought it. Exactly. Like you're gonna take that on the chin if you got it, or you're gonna try and deal with it or solve it. And if you come out with the W, you're gonna feel good about yourself. If you don't, you know that the guy ultimately took the better choices and you didn't for other reasons.
Yep.
But it's not because you're like somehow morally superior. And like having like this, basically you have temptation when you have too much like basically no restrictions. From a moralistic point of view, if we could even view it that way, because people do get offended about this type of stuff, and it can be a turnoff. I might be a bit of a chicken little on this. That's true. Maybe we'll see some unrestricted events, and the army lists will look great, and they'll maybe the skews will get trounced, and the best way to go is a nice combined arms approach or whatever. But maybe we'll see people just spamming as many magic missiles as they possibly can, just like Malefic Lords. Were with Smite and 8th edition 40k, which, by the way, that's totally what's going to happen.
Yep. No, I know.
So yeah.
I say personally, my thought process when I get the books in hand is and then I'm going to start a new high elf army eventually. For now, I'm just going to get the movement traits that space things out because I'm going to keep those on small bases because I might play 8th edition. I'm that type of guy. That's what you know what my group's like. We might still play that on occasion. But
Who knows?
My plan is to take the first month or two and every army list have something different. I want to play with everything in my army once or twice beforehand, but like I said, that remains to be seen, and we could talk about this.
This is the time, like, especially if you are like fresh off of 8th edition, or like if you're up 6th ed or whatever. This is the time to like look into that hobby cabinet and be like, what unit have I put together or acquired that has never seen the table more than once because they just suck. And this is their time to make. This is their time, man. Like, this is it. Like, this is the time to get those dudes out and just try them. That's what I love about like refreshes and like resets, is like everything is good until proven otherwise.
Yep.
And that's what I want to see. I don't want to just see armies of one unit. I want to see armies where we're trying as much different shit as we possibly can, and like that's why I believe in some restriction. I guess I can get off my little soapbox here. Everyone can call me an idiot.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
In the comments below,
I can only
let us
influence.
know how idiot of a Val is.
I can only influence. I cannot stop you, nor would I try and stop anyone from playing in an out of the box tournament. And I'll probably wind up playing in a few myself. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I look forward to seeing how this whole community grows. I'm glad that there's so many voices out there now, and like I said, I know you guys have seen growth. Even my channel's seen growth. Talking about this,
awesome,
because it's been a good time. So yeah, let's just get out there, have a good time. So Val, before we head off, because we're about that at that time for the length of a usual show. Where can I'm gonna put links down below, but where can they find you? Where's the best way to get in contact with you to talk some square bases, or listen to you talk about square bases?
Well, if you want to just listen, you can find us on any of the podcast platforms. We our primary platform, probably YouTube, where we do a podcast with me and Rob, and Rob's been cranking out edited stuff too. That's Square Based, a Warhammer Fantasy in the Old World is the subtitle, but Square Based should do it for you if you just type that into YouTube. We're also on all podcast platforms as well as an audio-only podcast. If you wanted to listen, we've got some good rambles where Rob and I go back and forth on a lot of similar topics. Yeah, that's where we're at. If you're desperate, you can go back into our back catalog on the Honest Wargamer streams. That's where we originally were posting those. There's a playlist on YouTube if you're desperate enough for that. I like the first episode. First episode's good.
Yep.
Where I do a little history of fantasy. I don't know how accurate it is, but I was certainly fired up to do it. I don't think Rob said more than 2 words in that episode because I was basically I hadn't had anyone to talk to. I hadn't had anyone to talk to about fantasy yet. Like a couple of local friends that I had like strong armed into playing against me here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rob was like, I want to do an old world show. I'm like, I'm there. What time? He's like, well, I recorded at 11 a.m. GMT. 6 a.m. my time? Yeah, sure. I'm there.
Let's do it.
And if you want to see, because we've moved on from it, just the back catalog. There's also only old minis ? Episode, where we come to the realization that only old miniatures would be in the old world, and that was actually a real. That was a real moment
come
for
Sigmar
us in the
moment,
show, because
yeah.
it definitely. That was are we doing this even if it's not our wildest dreams? It's pretty close, but that was a big bit of a gut check, and there were fewer episodes for about a month. But we got our win back, and I think we're pretty positive and fun show to listen to. So appreciate you having me out here, Chet.
No, I thank you for being here. I hope I get that legendary Heffelfinger bump on the viewership for this episode. Right now, Scary.
The Apple bump, yes.
Scary has the most watched of the podcasts, so we'll see
okay.
see if the Hef can take it down. But no, thank you for coming here. I'll put links to you know, your Twitter and also the Squarebase down below. So go check it out because they're doing a
Oh yeah,
great
and
job.
if you want to chat with me, I'm very easy to look up on Facebook. I'm Val Heffelfinger, the only one, and that's usually a good way to reach me. And if you like what you hear and you want to bother me in the Discords, that's Patreon only. But hey, listen to some episodes first. See if you want to hang out with us.
Yep. I bet you will because I did. But yeah. All
Well,
right,
that's nice, Jack.
everybody out there, stay Stormcast strong, happy hobbying, and I guess we'll say it, stay square based.